Hi, I'm Jason Hurd and welcome to Subtone. Today we're going to go into how we made Cabarza late night stories. Cabarza is my alias, which is a little bit more percussive and emotional house music. Beatport would call it nowadays organic or melodic house. I'd say with a bit of a tougher edge for those big sound systems. It's a bit of a emotional track for me, this, in more than one way. And that's because the last thing I did as Cabarza was write an album with my good friend Pete Zorba, who sadly passed away. And this is the first thing I've done since that. You can check our album out, Cabarza and Pete Zorba, different stories, on Spotify. Go and have a listen. And I'm going to be doing some remixes and some more releases on the label, Late Night Stories, very, very soon. So please keep an eye open for that. So this music, obviously most of you know me for producing house and tech house, but I've loved this music for forever, and whenever I go to Ibiza or used to go to Ibiza, we were always going to clubs where they were playing this kind of music, Luciano and Loca Dice. And nowadays it's a huge kind of style with people like Damien Lazarus and Crosstown Rebels and Adam 10 and Innovisions and everything else. I made this track just for me. I didn't go for any style. I was influenced by a track by Adam 10 and Mitagami, a remix of Renegade on Crosstown Rebels, because I heard that in Ibiza and it just hit me at this organic groove, and it just hit me so hard. So that did inspire me to make this record in the way that it did, because when I was on the dance floor and the lead hit, I was like, oh my God, what is this? And it just reminded me of why I got into producing electronic music 30 years ago. Going to the raves and listening to records like Orbital Chime and going, what the hell is this? And Enjoy Anthem. I've just felt a little bit more inspiration coming recently from the music that I've been listening to. So this is Cabarza Late Night Stories. I'm going to show you how I made it. I'm going to rush through it very, very quickly. But there's one quick thing I want to tell you is I'm not going to go deep into how I made this record so loud. And it's about -7 LUFS, which is competitively louder than most of the other references that I used in this track. But I'm doing a new course, how to mix loud without destroying your mix. This is a track we're going to use for that project. I'm going to give you a project in Ableton and Logic, all the stems, and you can work with me as I explain to you how to use the tools to get your music loud and how to hear how you're using them and not distorting or destroying the dynamics of your track. So this is Cabarza Late Night Stories. I'm not going to play the whole thing because most people don't listen to it. So you can get this project, you can get the stems, and you can get this track next week, all as a free download for subscribers to the Subtone Music Academy subscription, which is only £10 a month. And I've got loads of videos there, like over 60 hours. And everyone who's signed up has kept signed up and I'm loving the content that we're doing. So if you want to learn not just how to do something, but how to hear what you're doing, then please sign up now. So this is Cabarza Late Night Stories. Okay, that's Cabarza Late Night Stories, and I love it. You know, this is music that I love, you know, and it's not got lots of fills and things like that in like you get with like my tech house video. This is about feeling the movement of the individual sounds to create that journey, you know, more importantly than anything, because when I'm on the dance floor, I want to zone into something. And I've got a couple of leads that make it hypnotic, but also quite tough. And I'm going to go into how I've done that. So I'm just going to start from the top and I'm going to work down. First of all, I've got the kick. On the kick, it's a sample from a sample pack. You'll have this in the project. All I'm doing with that is automating the low cut so that you can hear it like this. Then got a tuner because I like it to be in key. I've then added some parallel saturation with Spectre at 46 Hertz. I thought it needed a bit more of a thump. And I did all this in the revisions after I finished the track. So I just felt that certain frequencies needed to be louder. I didn't need to level match. So if you're one of my clients, my one-to-one mentorship, going, oh, you've not level matched. I know. But this is what you do right at the end. So another boost around 750, 800. I felt like the kick needed a bit of body, and the tap just brought up the tap a little bit at 3.5K on the kick. And I really like that plugin. It's one of my favorites. I've then hard clipped the kick, and let's have a look at that. Just taking off the real kind of tap at the top of the end, which is like a hi-hat something. It's weird that it's doing it different levels on each kick because the kick's the same level all the time. But I go deep into this in the course, how to mix loud without destroying your mix, using this track. And we will go into this and I'll show you how to do it, what you're listening for and what you're listening for when it's gone wrong. So that's hard clipping, just to take a bit of that transient off the top that we didn't really need, okay? I've then used some soft clipping with standard clip. I do this every now and then, and what I've done is I've just put it up to 14%. Unlike K-clip, the hard clipping, which is quite transparent, the soft clipping here can add a bit of character to the kick. So let's have a listen to that in isolation. As you can hear, it's just giving it a little bit more density. So from a sound design point of view, I really like what it's doing, but I also like how it's clipping the kick. And like I said, we're going to go deep into this. I'm not going to go into that in this video. This is just how I made this track in the course. So head to Subtone Music Academy and subscribe. And I'm going to be uploading a video 2 or 3 times a week. I've then made it mono. I just like my kicks in mono a lot of the time. Sometimes when you get stereo kicks, it does give them a bit more tightness. So that's the kick. Okay, I then got my percussion. I've got a clap. Now, I didn't really have a clap in, but I just felt it just needed a little something every now and then. And it's very subtle in the mix. Again, it's a sample. And as you can see here, the phase seems a bit crazy, but I like the sound. And we go into this in mixing for loudness as well, about good samples and bad samples. I've then used standard clip and I've hard clipped the clap. There is a slight tonal difference. In the mix, you can't tell. And in the mix, this is quite low. So let's have a listen to this. It's only subtle with the leads in. One of the reasons why I put this in is that when the leads are out, we're kind of lacking that mid-range, which is where the most important part of a track when you're listening to a track. So I felt like it just needed something, and I like it. You know, so that's the clap. I've then used a couple of loops. I've not gone to town on this. Normally, I wouldn't use loops like this, but I made this track, and I make it on day one, get the music together with Ross Monroe, and then I'll arrange it at the day after I come back to it with rested ears, and I'll go, oh, I need to chop them drums up. But this, I just felt the flow of it worked really, really well. And because it's not about the drums giving it movement so much in this track. It's more about the synths that are going on throughout the track and automating them. This works fine for me. So let's have a listen to that. Nice little loop. Just take out the rumble on the bottom end. Bit of Spectre, which I added. Version 10, and we're on version 12 now. Just felt it needed to come through the mix a little bit more. So I used Spectre 785 in that area because the mix was lacking in the mid-range a little bit, specifically when the synths weren't in. And then used a little bit of reverb, and it's just drums percussion room with a hybrid reverb convolution. And then again, I've just clipped it. Again, I'll go into the course, why and how we clipped it the way that we did. So that's the first loop. This is the second loop. I really like it. Now, all I would have done is had the track playing with all the music in, had this loop in, and then listen to some loops while in the mix. And that one seems to come through a bit more. All I've done with that is get a Valhalla vintage verb on there, 1.33 and 19.2%. Sat it further back in the mix. And that's it. That's the mid drums. On the mid drums bus, I've just got a low cut. I've got no distortion. I've got no saturation on the group. I've got no compression just yet. It just, I wasn't hearing it. For me, I have to hear, oh, this needs a bit of compression, or this needs this. I may have tried a compressor on there or something else, but I never put one on. So let's go to the high percussion. We've got the closed hi-hat, okay? And all I've done is take out a bit of bottom end with the shelf. So it's really central. It's like a shakery, but got a little bit more edge and a little bit tougher, which suits this kind of music. I've then got what I call a 16s hat with the groove. Let's have a listen to that. And again, it's a bit more like a real hat. It's got a bit of a shakery edge to it, but it's a different frequency to the closed hat. So the closed hat comes through. This is slightly wider and sat back. It sounds like there's a little bit of reverb on there. And all I've done is taken the bottom end out of it. I don't put plugins on unless I hear something or feel like I need to do it. I'll always try and keep the bottom end clear for the kick and the bass, and I think it does work. And I'll try and keep the bottom end clear for mixing for loudness, which we go into in the course. I then added a ride. A bit more low cut on that. A crash, we all know what a crash is. Let's have a listen. Basic crash, a lot of it EQ'd out. And I EQ'd the crash in the mix because on the one, I had some effects, I had the bass, or on the two, I had the clap, the loops, and lots of other things. So because this track was about mixing for loudness, I took out stuff that I didn't need in the mix. So I had everything playing in the quiet parts and the busy parts, and then I EQ the bottom end of that out. And that's a key thing here, getting rid of the stuff you don't want. Should I have used a shelf? Yeah, possibly, yeah. Using a low cut can boost it, but I would have checked the volume. I then got a delay or an echo, as you call it, eighth dotted. Then got a shaker, kind of brings it all together. Again, I'll do like I do before with mover loops. I'll start off with a kick, a hat, and a clap, and I'll do my music, and I'll add the drums in to work with the music. And I probably thought we were lacking a frequency, so let's have this shaker loop. Just took out the low end, high loop. Listening to that loop there, you would go, that isn't right for this genre of music. And you'd be right, okay? But I did it as I'm just telling you. I got the music, I got what was most importantly in first, and I thought it was missing something, a bit of grit in the mid-range. And the thing is you can't actually hear that loop. And when I play all the drums in a second, you'll notice that it just adds a texture to the whole track. Okay, then I've got the high percussion bus, and on that, I've got a sidechain. And the reason why I've done this is because I'm mixing for loudness, so I didn't want anything on the kick. and I've put quite an extreme compression on the whole frequency band every quarter note. Okay, so when the kick comes in, the loop isn't adding to the energy of the transit of the kick, which is then going to give me less headroom. The key thing about this is you can take away from the feeling of your loop by having this on there, because sometimes the character of what's on the kick needs to stay in there. That's a decision you have to make. Don't just do the things that I'm telling you without listening to the mix and going, is this better for me for what I can hear? Yeah, not just what it's doing for mixing for loudness, because the most important thing is not about how loud you can get a track, it's how it sounds. You know, there's a lot of tracks out there, and it's the magic of the feeling of the music that's more important than how loud it is. Any of my clients, if you know I use LFO tool, it's gone really buggy for some reason. I don't know why. It keeps opening up with the wrong settings when clients send me their projects when we're doing a mix down on Zoom. And so Duck, I just find it to be a little bit more consistent. Someone did tell me that XFER are bringing a new one out, but for now I'm using Duck. It's exactly the same. And then I've got K-Clip. Let's have a look at that. It could have done with a bit more though. I have worked on this track. This is the second time I filmed this video. It will need a bit more. And when I push it then, could you hear it hurting the hi-hats? Could you hear the distortion it was creating? Look, there's delta mode here. It was adding to it. It was quite transparent, wasn't it? Okay, that's why I use this on the top end. I'd probably put it on crisp. Have a listen to it again. Now it is transparent, and can you hear it? It is kind of adding a little character at the top end that I quite like, funnily enough. Well, that's a distortion that you just heard in delta mode. We go really deep into this in the Mixing for Loudness course. So, yep, that's K-Clip on the high percussion. Now, in that group there, I've then put it into another group. And the reason for that is we've got an oscilloscope here. And what the oscilloscope does, we put one on each group. Okay, and you can see by the colours, it's the same colour of the kick, same colour of the bass, and so on and so on. What I do is, when I'm mixing for loudness, I use this to see what needs to be clipped or processed in a way to reduce the crest factor. And I do this at the end of my mixing my track. I don't mix for loudness as I'm going along. I may use a soft clipper like you just saw then with standard clip for sound design, but I do all this at the end, and we're going to this, of course. And if you look at this now, you'll be able to see all the different instruments. We can see that the kick, you can see how it's been clipped, and we can see that the kick is the loudest thing in the track. Okay, and I'll make my decisions based upon looking at this about what I need to address, because I don't want to make things loud for the sake of making things loud. I don't want to clip, I don't want to saturate and do all these things that make your track loud just for the sake of, oh, this individual sound is loud. I do it for the sake because it needs it for the mix. And again, it's one of the key things. So this is on every single group. And by looking at this, I can just say to myself, oh, the kick's really loud. That's what the master limiter is going to hit first. Maybe if I turn the kick down a tiny little bit more, I'll be able to get more loudness out of the track with the master. And again, I don't want to go too deep into this. So that's the high drums. And that's why I've got the oscillator on every group, okay? On the percussion group, I've got a duck. And what that's doing, there's one of these on every group. And as you can see here, the different levels, but it's just making everything bounce together, okay, to the offbeat. So it's making you go like this a little bit. It is like using a glue compressor, which I think I use later on the whole bus, but all the reverbs in all the drums and all the loops and everything just kind of feel like the one and glued together, going like that. I didn't feel like it needed any saturation. I didn't feel like it needed any distortion, so I didn't put it on. The number one problem I see with my clients when they come, they've watched too many videos on YouTube and this person said to do this on bass, do that on that, do that on that. They have 5 or 6 plugins that they've heard of different people and they don't really need them. And when I level match them, which is what most people don't do, and go A/B them, say, can you hear what it's doing? And they go, no. Okay. Or they can hear that it's taking too much body out of something, or it's done something detrimental a lot of the time. So I don't put stuff on unless I really need to. And so that's the drums. Let's have a listen to those. Nice balance. Okay, now we've got all drums. So what I do, I have the high drums, the mid drums, and then they go to all drums. So in this case, it includes the kick. Sometimes my kick goes to a kick and bass channel, whatever I'm feeling at the time. But in this one, the kick's gone on it. And if I go to the all drums bus, what I see on there is this plugin. Okay, this is a Ryan by Jason Joshua. It's a plugin that when I was making this track, I just bought it. One of my clients was using it, so I had to buy it. So I thought I would give it a go and give it a try. I didn't really like it at first because this is based upon Jason Joshua's drum buses that he does. And I like what he does. I love him as a teacher and I love what he does in his mixing and production. And I've taken a lot from watching his videos. He does more pop, R&B, Latino type stuff. He's amazing. He's got a plugin called the God Particle, which I use a lot of the time. Now, this plugin represents different parts of what he does. So I'm going to go through it. It's an all-in-one, and if you're trying to learn, it will really help. One of the reasons why I didn't have a lot on the drums is probably because I've got this, the colour side of it. So you've got A, B, or C, and you listen to it. Let's have a listen to them. You can see that the colour was kind of a bit lower around the 50 hertz mark there on the C. It worked better in this track. Some tracks, I think there's a frequency of colour and it moves up, a bit like the Shadow Hills mastering compressor where you have like tungsten, nickel and steel. I think that's what this is as part of that. You've got a high pass if you want to use it. All I do on all my plugins, okay, when I get a new plugin like this, what I'll do, I'll get it. There's a lot of parameters on this, unlike something like Spectre or whatever. And all I'll do is I'll go through it and I'll listen to it and I'll use each one. I won't do what I've seen someone else say, this preset's good for that and this is good for that. You could hear then that C was better for this track. The thump of the kick, it worked really, really well. And of course, I've been doing this in the mix normally with everything else been playing, okay? And all I do, I go through all these different things. This is the harmonic section, okay? So that's a drive section. This is the harmonic section. And I'll just click between the two, see which sounds better. The compression, see what percentage works better, whether it's A or B, turn it on and off. That's it. It's as simple as that, okay? And see what makes it sound better. But I'm always, always, always level matching everything that I do, okay? Because if you don't know the downfall of too much saturation, it can create problems in your mix. I'm going to go deep into this in the mixing for loudness course. So as you can see here, minus 7.9, okay? And then I've got just something left. And the same thing, all I do is go. And see what sounds best. Now, obviously, I would do this with everything else in the mix. I just wanted you to hear it in isolation so you could hear what it was, and I would level match it. I wouldn't go, okay, if I change the level of this, I'd have to change the level of this. It's so important. So there's that section, and then there's a harmonic EQ, which I think is just like a copy of Spectre. So before, when I said I don't need any more saturation or anything like that on the drums, I think we're okay. That's because I've got this on board. All I've done, I've given it a boost around 3K because when the lead was in, I felt like it was missing something, and then added a bit of air with the 10K. Again, just go all the way up, see what frequencies are being affected, and then find something that you think works for you. And don't do it just for the sake of doing it. I personally, I may be in Metric AB to my references to listen all the time. Okay, and then this is parallel. So I go deep into this. So this adds a bit of sub, low frequencies. This makes it a bit louder. I think it might be parallel in the whole mix, and this adds a bit of grid. So let's have a listen to them on and off. Everything I do it to extreme. I want to hear the frequencies affected. I want to hear what it's doing in extreme as I'm trying to learn something. And the more I do it, the more I can go, I need this, and go straight to it. But what does this sound like on and off level matched? Sounds amazing, doesn't it? It's tightening up the kick. It's kind of adding a bit of saturation in the mid-range, and it's also reducing the volume. Now, okay, the kick seemed to distort a little bit when I turned it off. Now, the reason for that is nothing to do with the plugin, and it wasn't distorting before. The problem is, on my main out, I've got my mastering chain. So let me just turn all that off and turn it on and off. Okay, sounds really, really good, and I like it. So that is Orion by Jason Joshua, and it's good. Do I prefer it to using all these as separate plugins? No, but for you, it's a good way of having an all-in-one for your drums. And if you don't really know what you're doing when it comes to saturation and everything else, and you feel like your drums are a bit of a mess, this might be a good way to start off learning. And I'm going to go into all these processes separately in the Mixing for Loudness course, so you can then, not use an all-in-one and make more refined adjustments to your mix. So that's Orion by Cradle and Jason Joshua. Everything we do is about frequency and character recognition. It's about tuning into each frequency, make up the sound, how it's changed when you put something on that sound, the attack of the sound, the body of the sound, the tail of the sound, the tone of the sound, whether it's distorted or clean or shiny or whatever words you want to use to describe something. If you can tune into those things on every sound and make a mental imprint by asking certain questions that are in the course, when you add a plugin, you can say to yourself, okay, what's this doing to the bottom of the drum loop? Okay, it's tightening up the kick. Okay, what's it doing to the low mids? Okay, it seems to clean them up a little bit. Okay, even though I've added some saturation, what's it doing to the mids and the highs? Well, the highs seem to be a little bit wider for some reason, and the mids seem to cut through the mix a little bit more. Again, I'll be doing this in that. From the kick that you choose, I'm going to listen to that kick. Where's the fundamental? Where's the top? What else is in the mix? All the sound choices, everything that you do is about frequency character recognition. And mixing for me is about the position in the 3D mix. So every decision that I'm making is from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, from the mid to the sides, from the left to the right, to forwards in the mix to backwards in the mix, right? I'm trying to place everything. And it's all about frequency and character recognition. A lot of that is about training your ears consistently and having a good room and listening environment. Okay, let's have a look at the bass. There's two parts of the bass. There is just a straight bass, which is on the G sharp. And then what I call the chorus, it goes from the G sharp down to the G with the chord changes. So that moves with the lead sounds. So let's have a listen to that. Nice bass, I like it. It's Trillion, and it's my basic preset, which I go to every time. Dark and Round Voyager. When I want a bass to have a little bit of tonality and cut through the mix on small speakers, but have a lot of density so you can really feel it, I use this preset a lot of the time, and I just obviously EQ it and use the filters and the attack and the decay and sustain and release to make it sound how I want to sound it. And I love Trillium. I use this on 95% of the tracks I work on. Got a bit of EQ there. Let's have a look if that's doing anything. Basically, just doing a couple of low cuts, building up the journey, going into the breaks. I've then got a Fab Filter Pro MB. Okay. So I've used this towards the end of the mix when I was doing revisions because I felt like the bottom of the bass was a bit unruly. But then I felt like the character of it could cut through the mix a little bit more. So I don't normally do this, but I just tried it and I liked what it did. So let's listen to that on and off. Okay, it does sound a bit denser, and the volume for some reason perceived to be a little bit louder. That's probably because of the lower mids that were turning up a little bit. And I did this in the mix, but what it's also done is give it a bit of continuity to the feeling of the dynamics of it. And I normally would have just done the under 84 hertz. I'm using my ears, I'm doing it in the mix, I'm trying to listen to the relationship between the kick and the bass. I would have loaded up metric AB and isolated the low end and listened to how it was affecting those areas in isolation so I could make a really detailed, informed decision. And it really helped it in the track. Let's have a listen to that in the mix. Now, how much better was that? You know, you could hear the difference. And I hope you could hear that on any system, even if you were just listening through your phone. And I don't think you should do this all the time. You've got to know when to use it. And I used it because the bottom end just felt a bit unruly when I listened to it. And I felt like the character of the kick needs, the bass line needed to come through. But only matters what it sounds like in the mix. And it just gives it a bit more consistency throughout the track as well. So that's the Pro MB. I've then got Spectre. Okay, and on that, I've got a little bump, 186, which is the main character of this bass, the tonal character. And I boosted that because I wanted to hear more of that and possibly more of that like on my phone. So what I'll do is I'll bounce the track down and go straight to Dropbox, and I'll play it from Dropbox on my phone speaker, and I'll listen to the mix that way as well. And I felt like it needed a bit more of that. Now, if I look down here, I can see that peak 3 gain is automated. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm putting that extra bit of character into the bass when the lead sounds are in. Okay. It sounds okay at the beginning. It just needed that character to come through a little bit more because it was fighting against the bottom of the lead. And again, I didn't do it just because the lead was in there. I've used my ears and gone, okay, does it need this? And I felt like it did. And again, it creates to the journey and the energy and the emotion of the track with the bass line, not just having it as one note, then 2 notes, but turning up that little bit and just letting it poke through the mix a little bit more here and there. Let's see, have a look what other automation I've got in there. Okay. Side chaining the duck. So if anyone's watched my mixing for loudness course, they know what I would have done here. I would have isolated the lower frequencies, put in duck and carve them out with the mix in full, with everything in. Okay, so this generally will get done towards the end. And I'll carve this to what sounds best. Now, a lot of people just go like this, but the problem you've got is there's a lot of bass here in your track you're losing, okay? So what you need to do is just listen in the mix. Go to my mixing kick and bass course. We go into this quite deep. And I've done that, and I've done it under 151 hertz. So everything above it, the character of it isn't being sidechained. All that's being taken out is when the kick's there, and this process helped the track get a lot louder, which you'll be able to see in the course. And what I do is I take off the side chaining in the breaks where the bass is playing, because I don't want to hear that pumping on the bottom end. So always be mindful about doing that. Then got a standard clip, doing some soft clipping. Again, we're not going to go into the clipping too much in this video. And then I made it mono. I didn't make it mono for the sake of making it mono because it has got character in it. So sometimes I want the character at the top end to be a bit wider and the bottom end to be mono. But I put the mono on, I listened to it on and off, and I preferred it because the bass is there, the questions are there, the answers are kind of there, and then you've got the answers that come in there in the middle as well, which we'll go into shortly. So I felt like with everything playing, the bass had more energy and dynamics in the center, and yeah, that's why I did it. Again, there's a theme to what I'm saying to you. Everything's done in the mix. I don't do all this in isolation. So that's the bass. That's what we got on the bus. We've just got an oscilloscope for what I showed you before. So that's the kick and the bass, the drums and the bass. So let's have a listen to the drums and the bass together. Okay, sound great, don't they? Nice and tight. That Orion's really helped them. Now, just to get you know, I missed the. This is just a reverse cymbal leading into certain parts of the track. And again, I've not gone crazy with the drums on this track. I've just wanted it to flow a little bit. So that's the drums and the bass. Let's go into the music. So the lead. So the lead is made up of 2 sounds. The first sound I got originally, and I really liked it. It really hits hard, as you heard in the mix when it comes in. It's a Marmite thing. Some people are going to like it. Some people aren't going to like it. I love it. That's all that matters. It's the question part of it. So let's have a listen to the first bit. Okay, sounds really good. What is it? That is the DX7. That's how you get them really kind of hard sounds with the FM synthesis. Now, my friend Julian Peake, who's called Vern as well, Stretch and Vern, he's got an original DX7. And I said to him, listen, will you run these? Because I've just done it all in plugins. Will you run it through for me? And he just said, it's not going to be that much better. He's got one. And so we stayed with the plugins. The Arturia plugins are amazing. Okay. And there's so many different sounds in there that you've never heard before that instead of just going to Splice and using Serum and using the same sounds that everyone else has used, you can use stuff which just sounds a little bit different. And you're going to see that in particular in some of the other sounds that I use in this track. So that's called Distort Lead. And as you can see, everything moving here, I've automated those throughout the track. What I've done is I've added an LFO, not on the grid, just messed around with it, and it's doing random changes to a few of the different macros. And what I would do is I'd bring up the DX7 and mess around with macros, see what changed it in a way that I would think would help me on the journey. And sometimes I would automate them macros, and sometimes I just think, oh, it just needs a bit of movement in it. Okay. So it's not the same sound all the way through. And the LFO is doing that in this case, just little changes so every hit isn't the same all the time. Then topped and tailed it with a bit of EQ. I've added Decapitator on there, I've not used it. Then got Spectre. And as you can see, I've not changed the output, so this will be the end. I probably just thought it needed a bit more presence in the mix. Let's listen to that on and off. When it's open, it just adds a little bit more top end to it. Just with everything playing in the mix, that's when I added this, right at the end. Again, this is the revision side of it. When I come back to it, I think, that just needs a bit more brightness. So the Spectre's really good, bit of parallel saturation there. I've then got the Valhalla reverb, 14%, 2.25, bit of a low cut 180, high cut to 9,000. I've then got the Mutator. This is one of my favorite plugins. It's definitely the best sounding filter. It reminds me of the old school Daft Punk sound. It's really well done. The only problem with it is, which annoys me, is, especially if I'm using a different DAW, the left and the right, you can't kind of tie them together when it comes to the cutoff, envelope sweep, and resonance. So you move one knob and they both move together. There's no connection in it. So what I've had to do with this plugin is create macros. So the way you create macros is you get your instrument. Sometimes you have to Command G, create group. In there, you've got this macro sign here, and this opens these, okay? And then what you do is you open this up, and it gets everything coming through. You press configure, and sometimes it will come up with a setting, but here on this plugin, you can see it there, okay? So we don't need to press configure on this one. So with this one, you go right click, map to macro, okay? You map it to a macro, which are these knobs, which you control with your hand, but I've got Ableton push. So automatically what happens is these, 4 of these will control the parameters that I want to control by hand. And then what I'll do is I'll go through the track and I'll play it from the start to the end, and I'll mess around with the macros I think need changing. Now, this is really important because it's not just drawing lines in. This is the feeling you get. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. And when it's wrong, sometimes that's the bit that's the magic. We don't want it to sound the same all the way through. We don't want it to sound too programmed. Get a bit of a human feeling in there. Do this on as many things as possible. I will do this a lot of the time on the bass, on the cutoff. I'll do it on all different things to create a journey. Coming out of a break, open the release, open the decay, whatever it might be you're doing on. It's that feeling that gives it the less robotic sounding kind of track. And especially with this music that's more organic, you should be trying to make your track feel less robotic, more human and emotional all the time. And this track is all about that, moving those filters up and down on this sound. What it's done is, first of all, take away from that sound can be really annoying all the time, okay? And what it's done is, when I brought the filter down, the duplicate, the double of that sound, which is a tonal sound, which we're going to next, comes up in the mix. And you don't necessarily hear the tonal part until you filter down. And then it's like, oh, that's nice coming through. What's that? That's what you want out of this kind of music. So that's the lead. Have I automated anything else? No, that's the automation. What we'll do is we'll listen to the double, and then we'll listen to it them both together isolated. So this is the double. Now, what I would have done there is I would have had the track playing. I thought this lead needed something tonally behind it. Put a soft synth up with the same MIDI and just gone through presets till something came through. Was like, oh, that's cutting through. So that was this sound, okay? And again, I've used a DX7, the Ad Libinam preset, and I would have messed around with it, done what works for me. And I've kept the effects on. I've topped and tailed it because this was just about tonality. It wasn't about anything else. So I kept the tonality in there. Then I did Spectre, added a bit of body around 800 in the mix with everything else playing because I thought it needed it. I then added some vintage verb again, been quite lazy with the reverbs on this track. And just as it back in the mix, I felt like it needed it. I didn't want it to fight with the lead. I just wanted to give it a tonality. And with the reverb and sitting it back, it sounds really, really nice, especially when the filter comes down on the main lead. So let's have a listen to that, just those two playing. That's emotion and feeling. You know, it's not just a static lead. We need to be doing more of this. Please, 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 please. If you haven't got a MIDI controller, I'm quite sure you all have, you know, go and buy one. And for me, you know, I don't really use push for starting off tracks anymore. I use it for playing, looking at different things, but I use it for this most of all. And I've got a Launch Key 25 here, which I can do the same on, but it's easier in Ableton to use the push. So do it by hand like you've got a real synth. And just that movement and emotion, you can hear where I turn it down and just the end of the lead, the last note, the filter comes down on the first bit and goes, whoa. It's like a real nice tonality to it. You don't hear anyone else because it's not just drawn up and down, dead simple. So this is key, I think, for any music, not just for this. And then I've put them two on a bus and I've sidechained them under 304 hertz. That's mixing for loudness. I've then put an imager on. One of the reasons I did this is because I thought that the questions, which is these, and the answers were all quite central. And now what's happened is I've got the questions out here, I've got the answers in here, okay? So I'm going to turn that on and off in the mix with everything else. You see how it brought the mix to life, not because of the mix, but because the questions are there and the answers there. Everything's thinking about telling a story, and that's what I'm trying to do with this track a little bit. I want to listen to this track from the way I make these tracks is I think that, okay, this is my last record, right? And I'm going to play it from the first beat to the last beat, and I want the journey to have movement. And as you can see with lead 3, which is the archetype sound, we've got that, you know. That's what this music's about. It's about emotion, it's about feeling, it's about a journey. And the depth of the mix, having the questions there and the answers there, just gives that track something that you don't hear a lot of. So that's the questions. What I did was I chopped that up because it was a bit annoying. And there was a bit more in at the beginning. So what I did was I chopped it up and just gave you a feeling of a taster for the journey leading into it, okay? So let's have a look at this lead one chop. It's exactly the same sound, so I'm not going to show you that on DX7. Great sound, eh? So it's just a couple of the notes off it. And what I've done is I've just cut out a bit of low end. I could probably cut out a bit more of that, to be quite honest with you. I've added an extra bit of distortion. Let's just start on and off. You can see it's giving quite a little bit of density and distortion to help it cut through the mix. Drive at 3. I've used the P. I would go through all these, or have you used E? No, I've used N actually. And quite a dark tone. And it's not like me, I've got it on auto. But yeah, I've put that on. I've then used this. So this is an amazing plugin. And just like the Orion, I just bought this when I got this. The Own Boys, I used to love it back in the day, and I used it for ages, and an advert came up for Own Boys Infinity, which is this, and I bought it. It's got so many parameters to it that it's changing so many things at the same time. A bit like on the DX7 with modulation and everything else. That, like, it would take me ages to achieve this. And when you put it on, I just went through the presets, see what worked with that sound in this mix. And then I went through and I messed around with all the parameters. This is going to take me a bit more time to learn than what the Orion's learned because of the amount of them. But I got somewhere and I thought, oh, that sounds really good. It's not just a normal echo or delay. And the Own Boys, you know, it's filtering the modulation, the harmonics, the frequencies, the timing of it's not equal all the way through. It's really, really, really good. So let's listen to that again. And it can go on forever and ever. As you can see, I've automated the gain here. And the reason for that is that sometimes I must have had it going a bit crazier. And you have to turn the volume down because it just goes on and on and on. So that's the Own Boys. I've then got a shaper box. What's that doing? Okay, so I'm just messing around here. So right now I'm thinking, I've got this sound. I want to introduce it, and I just don't want it to sound like everything else. So I messed around with the shaper box. Okay, it's on half a bar, and all that's doing is just turning the volume up and down on it. Give it a bit more feeling and a bit more movement. Let's have a listen to that. And of course, that's affecting the delay and reverb afterwards as well. Game changer. You know, messing around and playing with plugins, you know, is like in the old days we didn't have a symphony, didn't have presets. Messing around with everything, getting different delays or getting a tape echo or just messing around with it. Back in the day, what we'd do is we'd say we had this synth and it was a MIDI. We'd mess around with the parameters, recording it in, and then we'd record it through something like a tape echo or a reverb, and we'd mess around with the parameters. And then we'd have one strip of tape echo or reverb, and we'd get that and we'd chop it up and put it in different parts of the track. And I was watching a video of someone doing it, and I thought, my God, I've not done that for years because I'm in the box. I've kind of restricted myself a little bit. And doing things like this and automating everything by hand, I think is what music's missing. And now because AI is coming and making tracks that sound bloody amazing, we need things to not be perfect. You know, I think times are going to be changing from the sync DJ to the DJ who makes a bit of a mistake, but then pulls it back in and gives it feeling and an emotion to the DJ mix, as opposed to it just being done by a robot. So times are changing and music is going to change. And I think that this is the people who make music in this way and take time to give your record that emotion and movement and effects that people haven't heard before are going to be people that are going to get more credibility and do better within the industry. Of course, you know, there's always going to be a TikTok people, but I'm talking within the credible clubs. I've then got Valhalla Reverb, 3.49, 20%. I would have tried that before, tried it after, and then I've tried the volume on it with the gain just to turn down the feedback off the Own Boys. So that's a chop. And again, what I would have done normally is gone through it and messed around with it, maybe, and just messed around with the parameters as I was recording all the way through the track. I obviously didn't do that on this. And then what I would have done is recorded that to a separate channel, just the delays and effects, and brought them in and out. There's no possibilities, and we need to do more of this. Okay, so here we've got the answer, and it does change. Like here, we've got the G sharp, and here we've got the G sharp and the G. So the notes changed accordingly throughout the track. And then we had a couple of notes and take away a couple of notes and move notes a little bit. Again, just giving the track a little bit more movement and feeling that it's not the same all the way through. And people notice it, you know, when you're on the dance floor, when something's unexpected or something that you're expecting doesn't happen, it's really good feeling for your track. Okay. Again, we've used a DX7, you know, I was just loving it. And it's just the same kind of sound. If I had a Prophet here, I would have possibly put this through the Prophet, or I'm just writing an album. I'm going to be taking it down to maybe somewhere like Devon Analog Studios, putting everything through hardware and doing everything that we're talking about. But for this track, I liked what it did. And like I explained to you before, JP said to me that, you know, it's the DX7's the main one. You don't really need to do that. So what I did was I just went through presets, found things, and then used the parameters to make it fit the mix in the way that I did. It's a bit similar to the original, but when I go back to it, I don't get that spidey sense that goes, it's too similar, you need to get rid of it. I like it. And because it's in the center in a different position in the mix, it's got a different amount of reverb and everything else, it sits different. So it works. Let's have a listen to that. Okay, so I've just used the reverb and delay that was on it. As you can hear, the sound is direct sound is dead in the center, and the reverbs and delays are what make it sound a little bit wider. I've smashed the hell out of it with a decapitator. I put the punish on, drive at 3. I've used the N, again low tone, and then I've clipped it. We'll go into that in mixing for loudness. And that's the answer. Let's have a listen to them two together. Try and tune into the movement and the position of the sounds. Again, they sound really bad actually in isolation, but in the mix, I really like them. And a couple of DJs I've asked to play them out for me have really liked them, and it goes off really well. I've not gone to town on the automation on that because it is the answer, and I've done that on the lead. So that's the question and answer. We've then got what's called lead 3, and this is Synth V from Arturia again, and I've just gone through it trying to find some sounds which aren't your normal arps and a bit mad and a bit crazy. And what I've done is I've gone into it and just changed the sequencer a little bit, so it's the same all the way through besides the last one. And that's it. I would have messed around with these to see what sounded best, and then what I've done is I've got the frequency, the filter oscillator, and I've automated it throughout the track. And again, I've mapped it the same way I showed you to the push, and I've done it by hand all the way through. And that's just on the filter. I've then got the EQ8, and I've taken, as you can see down here, I've just filtered it, top and tailed it, and brought it in and out of the mix with emotion. Now, I have drawn this by hand, and kind of worked in this time, but really I should have done it by hand really instead of drawing it, but it works. I've then got ozone 28 7 milliseconds. It was a bit central. I didn't want it too wide, but I wanted it there, and that's why I used this. Then got shaper box. And what I'm doing is I am making it wide and bringing it into mono and making it wide and just giving it a bit of movement over 4 bars. I think that's because I did it to do with the question and answers and why I did that. So again, I'm making the track move. I'm giving it a bit of emotion. I'm making it feel like it's moving, but in relationship to everything else. I'm not just slapping it on. But let's listen to it from the beginning because that's where the filter's up and you can hear the build up of it. Again, in that part, it's really subtle, and then here, that sound, a lot of people would have just used that sound throughout the track. We've given it movement in 2 different ways. And sometimes when I turn the filter up on the synth, the output, and turn the low pass down on the EQ, that combination sounds really nice. And because I've done the filter output by hand, there's no definite sound that you're going to get because we're moving all the time and the combination of the two is always changing. So I really like that. And sometimes you can't hear it, but when you take it away, it feels like the track's missing something. I've then got shaper box, which we've talked about. I've then got track spacer. So what that's happening there, the track spacer is side chaining, fast attack, fastest release, stereo. And what it's doing is it's turning down the volume of this when the chop's in. So the one before that we looked at. So if they are playing, it turns down the volume. There's been a couple of points where they were fighting each other. And that's lead 3. Then they've got the piano that you've heard. I'm automating the top end throughout the track. Nothing major, really. I don't want it in all the time. I don't like the sound of the piano when the synth's in, but I like the tonality of it. So I filter down the top end. Use Keyscape. It's a bit dark. I like it, but I did have another piano and I changed it last minute to something a bit more darker and emotional. Took away a bit of the tone. This is a great plugin. Again, Spectrasonics. It wasn't as bright as the other piano, so what I did was I added Spectre in and added quite a boost, 1.34 at 1.73K in the mix. And obviously you can see here that it goes down, the filter goes down further than that, but it does add character to it when it's filtered down, but it also helps it pop through a little bit more in the mix. And we've got the straight chords then, as you can see with the MIDI here, you can just see it changes and builds up within the break. So it's not the same all the way through. So I want it to sound dark. I want it to sound like a real piano. And can you hear, what feeling do you get from that? Can you notice it's like a Spanish kind of chord, the feeling that it gives to you? That's why this track might sound different to other records. It's about the emotion, the feeling. It comes from the chords that you're using to the kind of scale that it is, to the sound that you're using and how you're making that sound move throughout the track, whether it be with a filter or a distortion, or it might be a release or a delay or everything else. All these things are key to making this kind of music. And you hear a lot of African kind of scales in the Afro house kind of stuff, and they create a certain feeling and a certain emotion. And that's why I love making this music, because you're telling a story and you're giving people a certain kind of feeling that I can listen to this music all day long, even like on Spotify in the car or something like that. So that's the piano. I've then got on there the UAD Fairchild. And I love this plugin. A lot of master engineers, a lot of mixers use it, that you see that the top mix engineers in the world. And I think it's about 35 grand for one of these now. There's an Unfairchild, which I think is 15 grand. And there's a reason why people use it. And there's a reason why the top engineers mix in the box and they use these plugins. I love UAD. It is compressing it. And it does have a tone, and it's a sound which will be some kind of saturation or EQ based upon the original box. But I like what it does. Okay, so how have I used it as a compressor? Not the tone box. So what I've done is I've started compressing it. I've pushed the threshold up so it's compressing quite heavy in extreme, and then I've moved the time constant to one that I like, pulled it back down to the threshold where I like it, and then I've turned it on and off. I've level matched it. I then turned it on and off in the mix to see if I like it. But let's listen to that on and off. Actually, this is set from the previous piano, so I'm going to amend it whilst you're listening. Well, we are listening. Actually, I preferred number 2. And I prefer it there. So what am I doing? I'm listening to frequency and character recognition, seeing what it's doing to all those. I want to spend a bit more time on this, gone through them. And these have different attack and releases that work for you. But for me, I like every plugin. I just like to use them. If there's only a few parameters like this, we have to go through it 6 times on a loop and listen to which one sounds the best in this track. And it's not always the one that you think, okay? But if you're thinking, oh, well, that one's got a slow attack, and I want the transit to come in, I'll use that one. You're right, but sometimes the other one just sounds better for some reason. Do you know what I mean? In the mix with everything else. So when you've not got loads of controls, I just play around and do it like this. And then find an amount that suits me and what I'm looking for. And then I've got a sidechain in it. So yeah, mixing for loudness is under 262 hertz. And I'm taking everything out where the kick is. You can see I've done that for the kick. And again, there's a lot of energy down there, and this will be helping me get a louder track. And what I've done then is I've automated it. So in the breaks, it's not sidechaining, because I don't want to hear the pumping on the bottom end. That's the piano. I've got one of the notes. I've made a reverse piano. I put shaper box on it, over 4 bars, just give it a bit of movement. That's a reverse piano, just to give the journey and the feeling of leaning into something a bit more. Then got the pad, and I have automated the cutoff on that. And I've used Omnisphere for the pad, gorgeous analog pad synth. Let's have a listen to that. Beautiful. There's lots of great presets in here. There's a new one of these out, actually. So the thing about this is I just wanted to take the cutoff down. I didn't need to do anything else to it. It's got lots of movement and dynamics and LFOs and stuff in it already. So the thing about Omnisphere is it doesn't work like every other plugin where if I get this and I move it, it doesn't show the automation here, okay? So what you've got to do with the Spectrasonic plugins is you've got to right click here, you've got to press enable host automation, okay, and then you do it. As you can see over here, that's when you can do it. It's in the background. It's a lovely pad. I've just taken out the bottom end. I didn't need to do much to it. That's the music. Okay, let's have a listen to the music from the break going through, just in isolation. First of all, let's go to the music bus. So on the music bus, I've got duck, just slightly bouncing, as I explained before, so everything's moving together. I've then got a saturate, so I'm doing some soft clipping, and we just go deep into this in my mixing for loudness course. So I'm not going to go into clipping today, but I've done that just to control the peaks of the music. So let's have a listen to the drop and the music and the feeling. It's got lots of emotion, it's got lots of feeling, it's different chords to what you normally hear. They're not just your basic minor major chords, pentonic. I love it. I love the music in this track. So that's the music, and that's where the feeling and the emotion and the story comes from. You can just see it by the automation and the different automations hitting each other at different points. That's a key part to this. Then got the vocal bus, which isn't really vocals, couple of samples off Splice, go. Simple preset, bit of hard clipping. I've then got this. Shh. Again, just a sample. I've just typed shh into Splice and added a crystallizer with the reverse effect on it, the feeling, not too long a delay. I'm taking out the bottom end. Let's have a listen to those in the track. Quite simple, just adding to the atmosphere of the track. Here's the effects. So I'm going to go through these really quickly just so you can hear here, but they're just standard stuff, just with a bit of low cut or reverb on them. So that's just twice in the track. Just in case you're wondering, this is my radio edit over here. I put them both on the same track. So I make lots of revisions and changes. So I'm doing it to both mixes. And then I've got this blaster that Tom Starr Ingo gave me about 25 years ago. Simple, obvious stuff, low down in the mix. Transition 1. Little white noise riser, little drum fill, filtered down, just a hit. And that's just before the drops. I've got big Valhalla reverb on there, mix 35, 4 seconds, pretty obvious stuff. Bit of EQ, took the bottom end out. And then a bit of a snare roll or a kick roll. I've just used like a hip hop kick. I didn't want all the weight on the bottom end of the kick that we had. Simple. I know you probably don't want to be seeing all this, but there you go. That's the track. And now the track, what I always do is I always do a pre-master before I go to a master. And the reason I do that is obviously sometimes people want a pre-master, and a lot of the time I master my own track. So then I'll do the mastering on the main, and on the pre-master I'll do things that I want to send to a master engineer if it's going to get mastered. So I'll put them on there. So I might have some kind of EQ or saturation or tape or whatever, and I'll put that on here. Okay, so all I'm doing here is automating the volume in the breaks going down as per what's going on. Now, I see this mistake loads, okay? And the mistake that I see a lot of the time is people create a massive build-up, right? And if they put one audio file straight in here, you see this getting darker and darker and darker, and the volume going really loud, and the drop comes in, and the level goes from here, right? The density of the audio file. And the problem they've got is they're building up, and then the drop just doesn't hit. I've seen it too many times. The clients come to me and they say, I just can't get my drop to hit. And all I do is this. I might EQ the bottom end out. I might and turn the volume down appropriately and use my ears. I don't want to hear it jump. I just want to feel the smack of it kick in. So let's just play that and see if you can hear that. So your drop hits you a little bit, you feel it. Again, it's all part of the journey of the track. Everything's about volume, turning this up here, turning that down there, wherever it be, with compressors, whether it be extra saturation, whatever it might be. I've then got a glue compressor on there, just basic stuff, slow attack, fastest release, not really doing anything, just kind of touching it. I've then got this little thing, which is lazy. I know it's lazy. I'm not disagreeing with you. But this is just, I'm quite sure you all know what it is. It's just an effect which takes out the bottom end, adds reverb, sometimes delay, a few different things. I never go past this basic one. I don't really want to hear it, but sometimes it just helps join everything together coming out of a break. You can see I never went too crazy. You've got this amazing thing. I'll turn that up so you can hear it a bit more. And I stopped it there because this is the best bit about it. This guy's getting his hands in the air. So yeah, that's Endless Smile. My friend James Reynolds and Tool Records have done one, which is quite good as well. It's just just the basic preset. This is just quite simple sometimes, and I don't obviously hear it like I just showed you in the extreme. So that's Endless Smile, and that's it. that's the track. And we go deep, deep, deep into this in how to mix loud without killing your mix. A new course for Subtone subscribers. It's only £10 a month at subtonemusicacademy.com. The link will be below. And I'm going to go in depth on how to make your tracks loud, when to make tracks loud, when not to make tracks loud, and use these processes. But more importantly, as opposed to everything that you hear for free on the internet, I'm going to teach you how to hear, right? We're going to have this project here, right? You've got a Logic project, an Ableton project, all the stems. I'm going to give you all the plugins that you need, and we're going to go through and we're going to hard clip, soft clip, limit, parallel compress, upwards compression, do it all together in this track so that you can learn the processes. And then through repetition, train your ear through frequency and character recognition to getting really loud music, yeah, where the mix isn't distorted and still got the dynamics. I hope you like this video. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. There's more videos like this in the free taster plan at subtonemusicacademy.com, but just for only £10 a month, we've got over 70 hours of videos teaching you everything from the fundamentals in our mixing and productions course to how to mix kick and bass to how to mix loud without killing your mix, coming soon, and lots of other videos, including more like this.